Welcome to What's Up with Catalight, a podcast designed to raise the many important voices that are helping to shape the future for people with autism and IDDs by challenging the status quo. Your host, Dr. Lindsey Sneed, dives into the thought-provoking topics happening in the industry and at Catalight, from advocacy to research to treatment options and more. Tune in to discover how Catalight's innovative treatment options are pressuring industry-wide change and shining a spotlight on care that's shaping the landscape for individuals with developmental disabilities. This is What's Up with Catalight.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining this episode of What's Up with Catalight. I am beyond thrilled for today's guest. It is Amol Deshpande. And Amol comes to us from Frontera Health. He is the CEO of Frontera. And we're going to dive in today about what Frontera is, why it's important in the context of autism spectrum disorder and intellectual and developmental disabilities. But Amol, thank you so much for joining us for our podcast today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we connected just by happenstance regarding shared interests with the work that your company is doing, which is incredible. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear more about it. I'm really excited about it. I was talking to one of our psychologists yesterday who's actually meeting with your team today. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to love it. Whatever you're doing today, you're going to love it with them. It's incredible. So listeners, stay tuned. I think you're going to be really excited about the work. But we connected because we had really a shared interest in access to care and what that means for autism spectrum disorder. So, Amol, can you share your personal experience as a parent of an autistic child and how that really inspired your work at Frontera?
For sure. Yeah. My son was diagnosed in almost 11 years ago when he was 2-3 years old. And we had a pretty typical story, which basically amounted to, and we were in a position we were in Northern California, we were in a position of means where we had the ability to private pay, we had the ability to do what we needed to do. We had very good health insurance, all of those things, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But the process of going and getting a diagnosis and the process of then getting into care was an unbelievably eye-opening experience. It's obviously a traumatic experience when a parent gets a diagnosis. Ours was not a mild case per se. We needed the therapy. This was not something where we could shirk that off. And we probably spent 3 months trying to find someone to do a diagnosis. It was difficult. The first party that we went to was a major research institution, and I would say they half finished the diagnosis, and then it was hard to reschedule the rest of it. Finally, we had to just find a private psychologist who we actually paid, I think this was even 10 or 11 years ago, $4,000 or $5,000 to do a private diagnosis. She did a wonderful job, but it took 9 weeks to get the report back. And then came the process of trying to find care. Right, calling around to clinics, we got some recommendations. All of them had wait lists. Finally, we found a clinic that would take my son. We got him in right away. And here's the good news. I mean, once getting into intervention, there was just a shocking amount of change in this little kid. Just within the first 4 or 5 months, I was stunned.
Yeah.
And the only regret I had about the whole process was, gosh, I wish I would have pushed even harder. But I realized I pushed as hard as I could, and I had all the means I could. Now imagine you're a parent who didn't have those means, or you have 4 other kids, or you have an hourly job and you don't have the luxuries that, say, I had at the time. How do you get that early intervention? To me, it transformed my son's life. He's 13 today. Mm-hmm. It's just unbelievable. I sort of look at him and I wonder, like, how is this even the same kid?
Wow. Yeah, your story is a common story. And what I consistently hear from individuals is this excessively long wait time to receiving a diagnosis, and then subsequently to accessing care. And this is really across the lifespan because we're seeing, for older individuals whose diagnosis were missed in childhood, youth, adults seeking diagnostic care are having a very hard time finding a psychologist who can do it. And the wait times, like you said, are astronomical. We're seeing these really, really long wait times across the country, 2 to 3 years to receive intervention once a diagnosis is finally established, which, as you spoke to, can be a very, very challenging experience, just emotionally going through it, but then just getting the access to what you need as a caregiver. And you had the means to do so. You had the means to access these things. And for families who don't know what to access, don't know where they're supposed to go, and don't have the financial means, like, this process takes even longer, which is hard to imagine. What were some of the key moments that really shaped your vision for improving access to care throughout this process?
Oh, well, the moments were a buildup of my own experience, and then, I would say dozens, if not hundreds, of conversations with parents over the years. And some of those parents are in the wealthy tech entrepreneur income strata. Some of them are people who've reached out to me on LinkedIn because I'm pretty public about all of these things, and I invite definitely and to anyone who's listening, anyone who wants to reach out, I'm happy to chat with anyone who's a parent anytime. But the very consistent experience was lack of access to information. Once there was an understanding of what to do, lack of mobility, ability to get their kid into care, understanding whether that was the right care or not. You know, very simplistically speaking, I do see a lot of parents and a lot of people in the industry who have highfalutin goals of curing autism and all of these different things. And I actually think if you just solved the access to care issue and the issue around we don't have enough wonderful therapists who want to do this kind of work, I think you would make a huge dent in the quality of life for the families and for the future of the child. And that was my epiphany. After talking to so many people, it's just the Occam's razor of the simplicity of the whole thing. It's not necessarily about a breakthrough drug or all of the strange things I've heard over the years about people trying to explain autism. It's really as simple as an intervention.
Yeah.
But what is hard is that the system doesn't have enough capacity. There's complications in the referral, diagnosis, assessment, that whole process. Once your kid is into quality care, I strongly believe the vast majority will see progress.
Yeah. The rate of autism diagnoses, is increasing. Every few years when the prevalence rates are done, we see an increase. And like you said, there are not enough clinicians to support the number of families who are needing support. And like you said, there's probably solvable things that we can do. So this receiving the diagnosis and going through that whole process, this really changed the trajectory of your life. Like, not just personally and within your family dynamics, but within your career. And at what point did you realize that you could make a dent in this area of waiting and access?
Well, there was a series of things. I mean, from the point when my son was diagnosed, when he was diagnosed, I was actually starting a new business. It was a startup that actually grew quite large in the agricultural technology space. And confronting the issue of a diagnosis with my son alongside trying to launch a business where you have all these other responsibilities for your employees, your shareholders, everything else. That was hard from a career standpoint. Like, at that point, all I had time for was focusing on making sure my son was in the right care, right?
Yeah.
So I was experiencing things as a parent, but also as someone in the workforce. Like, I'll be honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot of sympathy from any investors or people who were around the company for my own situation. I didn't expect sympathy. But to be honest, I don't think any of them really understood, despite me being public about it. So it was something I just had to contend with. Now, luckily, I had the means, the mental resilience, other things to do that. I've seen people exit careers completely when they have these diagnoses. I didn't do that. In fact, I doubled down and I said, I'm also going to figure out. Now, as time went on and we got my son situated,
Yeah.
I, over the years, realized like I'm becoming more passionate about this subject because when I saw the changes in them, I thought to myself, gosh, every single other kid I would see out there with autism, when I'd get a call from a parent, I'd have friends who would call and say, I think my son might have autism. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like they need to get into therapy because I saw the results here, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And that was where the opportunity sort of occurred to me because I also remembered what it was like to just get a diagnosis and get into therapy, which was nearly impossible, even with the means. So that's where the kernel started. And what I decided to do, Lindsey, is start investing money. So I have a family office and I have good fortune of wealth and I want to invest in this sector. And so I started looking for clinics that need capital for capacity, very simple things. I started looking for breakthrough innovations. I started looking for anything in the sector. And I probably became the most active investor. This started around 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And then continued through about 2022. Finally, when I left my previous venture, it was like, well, in mid-career, I started as an entrepreneur when I was super young. So I was like, I got two options. I can stick with what I do, or is this a new passion? Mm. And my conclusion was like, all the technical skills I have, I've built huge companies over the years. I know how to build something differentiated. If I apply it to this, and then because I'm not in this for the money, I never will be, to be able to do it in a pure way, right? To say, the intention of the technology has to be this access to, like, I got to solve a simple problem, right? How do we get more kids through the diagnosis? How do we get them faster to assessment? And then how do we get these clinicians who are dedicated their lives to treating these kids, not enough of them, but how do we get them way more information than they ever had before so they can do even more, right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of turning it into a company, the epiphany was really the technology advancements, all the way from computing infrastructure to buzzy words like artificial intelligence, but the ability to digitally phenotype, to use things like cognition in computer networks, to use things like video to be able to understand the condition better and assist that clinician. Those technologies, until about 2 or 3 years ago, there would have been no way of commercializing them in a cost-effective way. And now the potential is huge and the cost is rapidly coming down. And so you can imagine a world where we may get those kids into care. They may get into through diagnosis. They may get into care and they may get through care even faster. Like, it's pretty exciting. And I'll just mention one other thing. When I meet kind of innovative organizations like Catalight who are doing very cool things like the parent-mediated therapies and other stuff, you see the potential to also merge those ideas and, really transform the way care is done, because a parent can take control of their own destiny, right?
Yes.
They don't have to wait for 9 months anymore. And if they need information, they can use technologies to gather it. Very exciting. And it's why I decided to change careers,
It is really exciting. And we'll definitely talk more about how Frontera specifically is helping close these gaps. But like, as you were talking, I was thinking about, so I've been in the field working with autistic folks for 17 years. And as care has transitioned to like more school-based to more medical model, what I experience as a clinician is greater administrative burden, right? And what I see from a lot of behavior analysts in the field is they want to serve more clients, they want to serve more kids, they want to serve more families. But there is a big administrative burden because there is a lot of tracking of progress, there's record keeping, there's assessments, there's treatment reports, there's meeting with families. And so there is a high administrative burden per individual you're serving. And so then you multiply that by however many individuals a clinician is seeing. And we see the administrative burden is really high. And some of the work at Frontera is really like helping support that. But I think, Amol, one of the things that's really incredible about you in particular and your work is you're really helping support an underserved community in a very altruistic manner. And you're helping children and families get support that they need. Have you reflected on that about this impact that you're having?
Yeah, well, that's another reason that it was important. It's like, for me, it's hard to get motivated about something unless I feel like it's having that impact. Now, when I was a young entrepreneur, I was just trying to get by. I mean, I wasn't in a position to be altruistic necessarily. I still wanted to have an impact, but I had to earn money.
Sure.
If I was going to have a family, if I was going to, whatever it is I was going to do in my life. But after some good fortune, the way I look at this is very simple. Like we have to look at this in terms of the lives impacted. And when you're talking about autism, I will point out one other thing. I think it's still a condition that's in the shadows. It's not like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. If you have a 75-year-old parent with Alzheimer's and you're taking care of them and you're a hero. And if you have a kid with autism, you're sort of in the shadows. I don't want to use the word embarrassed, but a lot of parents they aren't encouraged to talk about it. They aren't encouraged to think about it positively. They're encouraged to sort of dwell on it. And they're even given pamphlets of information that cause that. So the way I look at the impact is across the income spectrum. But I will say one thing is disproportionately, if we can affect low income, very underserved regions, rural regions, that is one of the main focuses of Frontera. The only place where we offer any services, for example, is in rural regions where there's no other providers. And the reason I feel this way is that I think that if you're having higher income, I think you're still going to encounter these issues that I did.
Yeah.
But at least you have some options. If you are in a rural market, if you are low income, if you're hourly job, it is a pretty destitute situation, and we have to have things. So we actually, as a core tenet of our business, if we do business with someone who's like a .org who's serving a lot of great people, or is in a rural market, or is in an underserved, we will discount our price on everything. Like we will offer our own health equity discounts to help, because I think that if you can serve that population, that we'll figure out a way to take care of the rest. So it is a very important part of the mission, and one that has to remain front and center in whatever we do. So yes, I think it's with the rates increasing. I'm sure Lindsey, this, but if you say you're in a place like rural New Mexico where we do business, the diagnosis rates are lower. Thankfully, there's recognition coming and you're starting to see a bit more diagnosis. But then there's we're dealing with poverty. We're dealing with two-income households, hourly jobs. How is someone to commit to 20 hours of care?
Yeah.
And we want to provide solutions for those families as much as we want to provide solutions for the wealthy family in the Bay Area. So
yeah. You brought up something that I just want to go back to, because it speaks to the heart of a lot of why I do what I do. And you're talking about the parent's experience, right? Specifically that potential embarrassment or not sure how your child is going to react in a public sphere. It can be very overwhelming. It can be an isolating experience for families because they're not sure what to do, especially if they don't have access to care. But one thing I'm seeing, I don't know if you've seen this as a parent, is a shift in there is more understanding of autism than there was, when I started 17 years ago, for sure, more acceptance. But what I always love to tell parents is a lot of the things that you love about who your child is and who they are, for any parent, their quirkiness, their uniqueness, for a parent of an autistic child, it's their autism. It's being who they are. And part of who they are is being autistic. And when a parent can go through the process of understanding who their child is, get the supports and how they can effectively interact and engage with their child in a meaningful way, it can really change the trajectory for not just the family, but for the child, which again is why this care can be so, so important.
For sure. Well, and what I'll tell you is what's interesting is when you get into care and you see the progress, your confidence as a parent grows as well to, say, take your child into a social situation where you would have been worried before. And something still may happen. But see, here's the thing that I noticed about, say, my son, is the more exposure he got to situations, the faster he learned, right? If the goal is to get to social norms or functioning, when you go to the Starbucks or McDonald's or wherever it is you're going out to a restaurant, whatever it is, go to the movies, the more you get exposed to it, the more likely it is they're going to learn how to do it. But if the kid's in the shadows, and if we haven't gotten into therapy and we don't have any training as a parent on what to do, you don't want to go to the theater and have a massive tantrum and meltdown. And that is what plagues parents, in my opinion. Now, what I think is, this is where I really respect what Catalight's doing, and I've seen others where focusing on the parent training and educating the parent as well, in terms of saying, look, there's therapy, but there's your role in this is very large, right? And whatever time you do have, if you have a lot of leisure time and you're wealthy, then probably the expectations are even higher. But if you're working an hourly job, find that hour on the weekend to reinforce these things. And then ultimately, as you see progress, don't be afraid to get out there with the kid. Let me just give you a sidebar of an example, and I do have a lot of empathy for parents. I was a CEO of a gigantic startup, and my son had made a ton of progress, and as I mentioned, I didn't expect any sympathy from, say, investors or people around the company or whatever the case is. But there was a point in time where we decided we needed to move because we wanted to get access to better schools and a bit of a better environment. And for like 2 or 3 days, I'm a pretty responsive person as an entrepreneur my whole life. Like, I'm always engaged. I was basically off the grid, right? I was working on getting this move done. I was trying to find the right school for my kid. We moved from California to Colorado. And I had someone in the company who was higher up, like a board of directors, who started emailing and badgering me about, even though I told them, like, hey, I'm doing this, for my son. I'm just going to be gone for like 3 days or a week or something like that. I just got to get this done, right? This is a big decision and a big move. Badgering me about getting back to him, and you're not being responsive, and this and that and the other. And the point I want to make about this is, it isn't just income that defines the difficulty of a parent in this situation, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have people you work with or who are in the environment you're in that have any empathy, or they can go even further. They can almost treat it as, oh, well, this is a reason you can't do your job properly, or whatever the case is. It's really hard because as a parent, you have your own life. You want to be a successful professional. You want to have your own personal life. And that's the issue, is that autism isn't front and center. It isn't something that's understood, and isn't something that enough people empathize with. You have that same dialogue with somebody about a parent with Alzheimer's, they'll leave you alone for a week.
Yeah.
But with me, I use that example because, even someone in my situation can get bullied or get managed, or whatever you want to call it, when they're just trying to do the best for their kid.
Oh, Amol, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Well, at Catalight, our big focus is access to care and reducing wait times, reducing wait time to diagnosis, reducing wait time to intervention and care, which I think, of course, is what brought, us together as two organizations. We've spoken about long wait times and systemic barriers that are impacting these families and these individuals. So can you delve now into how Frontera's technology is really addressing this and trying to change the landscape?
Yeah, and to start with, one thing I want to mention is Frontera, first and foremost, believes in a couple main things. One is access to care, and getting kids into care is everything. Number two, the clinicians are at the front and center, and they're the locus of that.
Yep.
And then the parents. Okay, so when you look at the ecosystem of parent people that we want to serve, that's the ecosystem there, right? Like, we want to make sure that those people feel supported, because at the end of the day, then I think that's going to lead to better care. So what is going on? When I look at, we have 1/3 as many therapists as we need. I would say on diagnosing clinicians nationwide, we maybe have 1/10 as many as we need, maybe 1/20th. I don't even know what the numbers are.
It's very limited. Yep.
Yeah. And so then I asked, like, why, right? And there's a lot of reasons. Like, you need a lot of education to become a therapist. You have to commit to going and getting a master's or a PhD. You have to be willing to take on this pretty tough job. And there's all these very courageous clinicians who are willing to do that. But it isn't the highest paying job in the world. I think you get a good job, you have a good career, So you have to have the right kind of person as well. So what we were thinking about with Frontera is how do we assist that person, right, to do the most that they possibly can, and what is it about their day and whether it's a diagnosing clinician or a BCBA or whoever it is, or even the RBT in the process. And our conclusion was we need to take that administrative burden away.
Mm-hmm.
So that was step one, is sort of saying, how do we reduce the burden on writing, synthesizing things really for the purpose of templatizing in a lot of cases, but also assist with cognition, because there's a limit to human cognition. Like how many cases, how many pieces of data, how many inputs from a technician can a clinician consume in a single day, right?
Yeah.
No matter how much your brain power is, there's going to be a limit to that. And if you can create a platform, a technology that can assist cognitively in that, it can be a cognitive assistant to you in addition to helping you with that report, helping you with that administrative burden, then that could make your own cognition very extensible, right? Like we can leverage that clinician 2-to-1, 3-to-1, and they can leverage themselves without having to have the burden on their time. Saying, I'm not going from working 40 hours a week to 80 hours a week. I am working much smarter in the 40 hours and I'm getting more done. And then there's a second thing, Lindsey, I would say about Frontera technology is data.
Yeah.
I think that I can give you an example where when I was in therapy with my son, we used to meet with our BCBA and case manager like once every month and a half or something. And a lot of times by the time we met, my son had already mastered certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd been working on those for 3 weeks, even though he'd mastered them. Like, he's been doing this for almost a month.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, the RBT, it kind of looked like it. If I could give you 30 frames a second of data, phenotypic data on every session, how much quicker would you know as a clinician that a child is mastered or is not mastered? In fact, you would know why. Well, we're not implementing the therapy program exactly correctly, but the machine, where the machine comes in, is assist you in the cognition. It doesn't replace your cognition. Like the clinician and the clinical thinking cannot be replaced. So Frontera's first 3 products are a tool to assist diagnosing clinicians, a tool to assess BCBAs and assessment. And what's coming early next year is really, I believe, the first ever example of digital phenotyping in mental health. And we haven't released it yet. You've seen a demo.
Yes.
We haven't released it because we don't want to over promote anything. But that, I think, could change the game on the data side. So the 2 things: it reduce the administrative burden, and number 2, give the clinician so much data that they can leverage their day in a better way.
Yeah, the data tool for sessions, how I envision it, like how I kind of conceptualized it, is like, it's pretty remarkable. I was really excited when I saw the tool because it really is an assistive tool. It's capturing an interaction and telling you all about what is happening between the child and the parent, or the child and the RBT, or the child and the behavior analyst, and providing all these data points in quick succession, like hundreds and hundreds of data points, and can provide a clinician so much information that on things that you missed, about time points where joint attention occurred and you missed it because maybe you weren't looking at that one moment, and there's joint attention happening between the parent and the child, and it's capturing those in real time. And
well, Lindsey, I mean, you can imagine a world with the innovative things Catalight's doing with things like parent-mediated therapies, of saying, anytime you're in a parent meeting, if you want to send a video, we will phenotype it for you and tell you.
Yes.
But here's the thing is, and one thing I want to alert people to is there's a big difference between true cognition and just a transcription tool. Like, I can take a video of a session and transcribe it.
Sure.
And I can even create a summary of it. But to get you information like, this child demonstrated joint attention 3 times.
Yep.
Or something like, okay, this child was disengaged for 30 minutes of this session, to give you the proactive information for someone to say, okay, I need to call this parent or the RBT and course correct a little here, because here's what they need to do to get the kid back engaged. And that is like the machine should do some of that work for you.
Yeah.
But ultimately the judgment of what to do with that data has to come from the clinician to say, okay, the child is disengaged, but actually we made progress in this session. Like, they demonstrated joint attention 3 times and we were disengaged for half the session. That's not the best, but it's okay. On the other hand, you had a session where you saw very poor demonstration of goals or progress towards goals, a lot of disengagement. Okay, here we need to intervene. And like, the pace at which you'll be able to do that is transformative. And I use a point from 10 years ago because, like, what is 3 weeks worth when you're doing 20 hours a week?
Yeah.
Think about the cost implication. Think about the allocation of time and resources of the clinician or the RBT. It's a human labor business.
Yep.
So digital phenotyping, and that's what we call the video platform, it's extremely hard to do. And the reason we haven't released it is because not only is it not fully ready yet, it's not cost effective yet. So to be able to get to the accuracy levels that a clinician would demand, right, to be able to trust the system, we have to spend a lot of money and do a lot of R&D work. But once it's out there, we want to make sure it's accessible, very low cost. Ideally subsidize it for, like I'd love to do something where you say to anybody, like, get into therapy now and get more information than you ever have before, right?
Yeah.
If you're willing to do a parent-mediated therapy, for example. So exciting, but still a lot of work to do to get that really ready. You know?
And really the out of the box thinking that it takes to think about those things as a clinician, like, that would have never crossed my mind, of course. That's not my area of expertise. But, everyone knows who's interacted with me at any small level knows that I'm a big fan and a big proponent of parent-mediated care first, because it is the least restrictive environment. And we do see positive outcomes for the child, but also for the family in this model of care. But when I first saw what you were doing with this phenotyping is we see really positive outcomes with our parent-mediated care. And not just us, but across the nation. We see PMIs having really, really great outcomes. But one of the pieces of feedback I get, which is valid feedback from other clinicians in the field and researchers, is, how do you know what's happening in between sessions with parents? And I think that is the potential game changer for this technology. And in my context personally, is a parent being able to upload a video every couple days, do the phenotyping, and be able to collect accurate data on what's happening between a parent and their child, which, again, like, that's one context, that's one area I'm super excited about, but I think it's groundbreaking.
Yeah. And again, that data, the upload of the video, right, and that process to get the clinician and the parent a body of analytical information about what happened in those 30 minutes, right? That is where the magic happens, right? To be able to say, and then longitudinally, imagine if you did that over, say, 4 months or 5 months, right?
Yeah.
And you'd be able to trend it and say, like, look, because I will tell you one other thing as a parent. Parents sometimes abandon therapies because they think there's progress not being made, because they have this misunderstanding of how progress happens. Like, you think you're going to snap your fingers, man. But I can show you that, and very analytically with detail, that there is progress happening here. Like, yes, you don't notice it every single day. That's where this I think becomes really powerful. And I think that'll cause more parents to stick with therapy. I mean, we do see parents cancel and abandon therapies, which probably is the only part where I get disappointed with a parent, is when they get, this is not a short process. You had a kid with autism, you have to make the investment of time. And if you do, you can have a tremendous outcome, but you can't short circuit it, change your mind every single time, or expect results overnight. And I think the data would help a parent understand, like, if you got a highlight reel of your kid after every session and saying, look, they demonstrated joint attention today. They haven't mastered it, but they demonstrated it. And here's the progress we've seen over the last 2 or 3 months. I think you'd see a different level of engagement with the parent. So
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I see the same exact thing, where it's like, we're seeing small progress is still progress, even if it's not as visibly seen. And what I tell families is I'm really transparent. I'm like, they come in and they think there's going to be like this magic turnaround over this very, very short period of time. And what I tell families is I don't have a magic wand. I don't have a magic wand that's going to make everything, whatever you perceive as better, or whatever change you think is going to happen. I can't do that overnight. And I don't have some magic system. But as a parent, we can give you the tools with the support of your treatment team to affect change in your child's life. And I really do think this tool gives a visual, like parents will visually get to see the changes happening. And I think it's so pivotal.
It's Lindsey, and then the data. If you get the further engagement of the parent, you're going to see compounding effects of better outcomes. And that's just at a very simplistic level. I think if it just did that one thing, I think it would be more than enough. Now, I think there's a whole series of other things you can do. Like my son, we decided to try medications after he got to a certain age. How does that process work? You go to your psychiatrist and it's like, oh, well, how was he? Well, he was kind of hyper in the morning and he was tired. I'm like, this is how they titrate medication today.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, imagine if I could take that same information and say, you know what, look, actually his hyperactivity appears like, the mind remembers things in the way it wants to many times, right? But the kid's not actually more hyperactive. The medication's actually working. It just doesn't seem that way because the one episode that you had of hyperactivity affected or biased you when you went back to titrate the medication.
Yes.
These are the things that I think the precision of care that we can get to, like that's what's exciting to me, right? Like bringing that level of precision to autism, to ultimately every early childhood condition. That's exciting. And I think parents will be then more engaged. They'll see the progress and you'll get better outcomes. So.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I'm so excited about the work Frontera is doing. So, after all you've done, all the changes you've made personally and professionally, how do you view your career and the shift you made after your son's diagnosis? How do you compare your aspirations prior to the diagnosis to what your aspirations are today?
Yeah, it's a good question. My since being a young professional and an engineer, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that's always what I wanted to do. But as I've gotten further along in my career, I just think about impacting humans. And the way I look at it very simplistically is, and then I'm a specialist, meaning just doing random things. I have to do something I know well. I got to know the agricultural sector very well, and I built one of the biggest companies in that sector. And I still do things in that sector. But professionally for me right now, given what I've experienced, right, as a human, I think that this is where I can have the most impact for the next 10, 15, 20 years to say, can I push the envelope? I used to do that with my investments. I think my family office was one of the first to really start writing the first check, right? Sometimes those are going to fail. I accept that. I know that I won't make money on a lot of the things that I've invested in. But if it spurred other investment or other people to enter the sector, then it had a positive impact, right? With Frontera, I think where we want to go is we want to try to do the deep technology things that others who are maybe just solely focused on the business, side of things will not do, right? Try to do the things that really digitally phenotyping, not just transcribing your session. The reason a lot more people don't do that is because it takes many, many millions of dollars more to do. So what I'd like to do is use my position to attract that type of investment and that type of innovation, and then empower the families, empower the clinicians. And I'm not counting it in dollars and cents. And if we were to, get good results or make money doing these things, we'd plow them right back into doing more, right? As opposed to, saying, well, here we created a nice business with this. So if I had to articulate it, we want to get the best possible minds, the most possible capital, all of that stuff focused on this. And if Frontera can be a catalyst for that, it's worth me spending all my time on it. And I do, as I said, I do want to impact the human experience. I take any parent who reaches out to me, I take a call with them.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not a financial transaction. It's really about, I get something out of it. I learn. It gives me something to think about, but more than anything, I just want to share my experience.
Yeah. Amol, I'm so thankful for your work and your motivation. And I think in my experience, what sets Frontera's work apart is how personal it is to you. And like that embeds every aspect of the mission and what you're doing and the amazing work and how you're seeing the problems and trying to solve for those problems. Like it's incredible. Nobody can see me, but like I have like the biggest smile on my face. I'm just so excited about the work.
Lindsey, can I share with you that Catalight I've met a lot of organizations in space. What I do appreciate is the willingness to innovate, that mission orientation around access to care as well, and you guys have done a good job on it. The innovation of things like parent-mediated therapies, which have the potential to really make a dent in this wait list and all these issues that we're talking about, especially when combined with technology. And then the openness, right? Like I think the other thing about bringing business aspects into this, there's people in this industry who refuse to integrate technologies. They say, I don't want to work with this person or that person. We have taken the attitude for anybody who wants access to this can have it. And actually, if you are doing it in a altruistic way, say like Catalight is, or you're serving a low income or rural, we'll make it even cheaper for you. Like nobody will be turned away, right? That's the simple aspect of it. It's not a business mindset of, oh, here's a competitor, I'm not going to let you have it. Oh, the only people we would not allow to use the technology is someone who we thought would use it inappropriately. Otherwise, anyone can have it. Wow. And that's where we want to be, right? Is in that position of saying, take it and enable it with it, whatever you want, as long as you get more kids into quality care and more outcomes, good outcomes, we're happy. And that's the simple sort of, if I boiled it down. And I will say, I wish there were more organizations like Catalight who had that openness to try new things and do other things. I think people, protect their turf. They don't want to do this, they don't want to do that. And that's unfortunate. I don't think that helps the issue. So I do appreciate when there's organizations that do, and we'll go out of our way to support those. So.
Wow. Thank you so much, Amol. Amol, thank you for participating in the podcast, for sharing your vision and your mission and your personal experience.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you so much. I hope that this podcast brought a lot of meaning to your day, and we will see you next time.
This has been What's Up with Catalight, hosted by Dr. Lindsey Sneed. Now you know what's up with Catalight.